Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vichaar Season 5, presented to you by Warwick India Forum. My name is Simar Singh Gabadia, and I am a co-head of the talks team at the Warwick India Forum. It now gives me immense honor to introduce today's guest speaker, Mr. Abhinandan Sekhri. Mr. Sekhri is the co-founder and CEO of Newslaundry, which is a news and current affairs website. The news organization does not carry any advertisements and runs on a subscription-based model. Newslaundry's journalists won the 2015 Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism for Investigative Reporting. He has also worked as a producer, director, and writer in television and film projects, including Highway on My Plate and new satire show Gustaki Maaf. He is also a co-founder and trustee in Delhi-based NGO PCRF. He was the executive producer for Chase, a documentary series by Scoop Food. He regularly delivers lectures and hosts panel discussions on journalism, RTI, and the importance and independence of media. He produced, scripted, and co-directed the documentary film Chadar along with Prashant Sareen on winter trade route in the Zanskar Valley of Ladakh. Chadar went on to win the Best Travel Documentary Award at the EVEO Spring Fest 2000 at San Francisco and received a special jury prize at Okinawa, Japan. Sir, it is a pleasure to have you on WIF Vichar, and we look forward to an interesting and insightful conversation with you. Should we begin with questions, sir? Should we begin with the questions,
yes,
sir?
Simar, thank you. Yes.
So first of all, sir, could you tell our viewers about your early life, upbringing, and education, and how they have shaped your strengths and overall personality?
Well, I grew up in Dehradun. My mother was a school teacher. She used to teach at Welham.
I'm sorry, sir. I think the internet at your end is a little unstable.
School. My father was in the army. He took premature retirement so he could spend more time with us. At my India.
I'm sorry, sir. Yes.
Start again?
I think so, sir. Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you. I'm
Hello.
just checking my internet speed. Yeah, you froze up right now, Simar.
Yes, sir. I was checking my internet connection as well. I just changed it to a different connection. But I'm not sure because my previous connection, I just checked it worked fine. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, now I can. But you did freeze up after you asked me
That was just because I was changing the network. If you don't mind, sir, could you start the answer again? Because it was just freezing and it might interfere with the recording. I'll ask the question once again.
Sure.
So could you tell our viewers about your early life, upbringing, and education, and how they shaped your strengths and overall personality?
So I grew up in Dehradun. My mother was a school teacher. She used to teach in Welham. My dad was in the army, although he took premature retirement, I think 84 or 85, if I'm not wrong, so that he could come and stay in Dehradun with us because like any army officer, he used to be posted here and there and often in non-family stations. So I attended Welham Boys School from class 1 to 6, and from 7 to 12, I was at Doon School. Those are the most magical years because Dehradun was a small town. It wasn't the city it is now. So I think just being in a small town, you met a lot of interesting people. You did a lot of interesting things. You went tree planting to, Sahasradhara. You went trekking. I've spent a lot of time, going trekking in the mountains around Garhwal, Himachal Pradesh, because that was a part of school activity. I've spent a lot of time in, you were supposed to volunteer work in some organizations in Dehradun. It used to be called SUPW, Socially Useful Productive Work. So I just think the 80s, and early 90s, basically late 70s to early 90s was a far more innocent time. And there was a lot of time because there was no internet and there was no cable TV either. So you had a lot of time to yourself. And as apparently now psychologists have started figuring out, it's good for children to get bored because that's how the mind kind of thinks of other creative, unconventional ideas. So I just think growing up in a, 4G middle class family in Dehradun was a fantastic childhood. It's like a Malgudi days type
I think
idyllic childhood.
I can relate to a lot of it. I went to a boarding school myself. I went to Sinar, if you're aware.
Yeah.
Can relate to a lot that you're.
We used to go to Sinar very often. We used to go to Sinar to play basketball. I have a lot of good friends from Sinar, yeah.
That's nice. So proceeding to the next question, sir. How would you describe your initial forays into journalism, working for Aaj Tak and Newstrack? And what were the learnings that you imbibed from that phase?
Well, my first exposure was to actually Newstrack. Aaj Tak started a little after I had joined Newstrack. And I only started reporting for Aaj Tak in, I think, 97, if I'm not wrong. The first year and a half, I was only reporting for Newstrack. And reporting on Newstrack was a phenomenal experience because back then, reports did not have to be 30 seconds to 90 seconds because that was the Aaj Tak brief. When Aaj Tak started, it was a bulletin back then, it wasn't a channel. A Newstrack, our stories used to be anything between 5 minutes to 25 minutes. It was almost like a documentary film, which meant that you did a lot of research and there was no internet like it is now. So the research meant I actually had to go to libraries and pull out files. So there was like 4 or 5 days of research before you started writing any script for a story. So I think the biggest learnings, and I'm glad I joined Newstrack back then, was the importance of research before you start any report or start writing a script. Second was I was very fortunate to have an amazing boss like Madhu, because see, your first exposure kind of frames what you think of the profession. And now when I see journalism, it's basically, it can be only described as cowardice and noise. Whereas when I saw Madhu and the way we used to see her, conduct herself, she was completely unafraid. She was willing to pick a fight with anyone. It could be the prime minister of the country. So we thought that is normal.
That was Aaj Tak?
She's Newstrack.
Okay.
This is Newstrack. She's the founder of Newstrack. Aaj Tak started later as part of Newstrack, but when I joined, Aaj Tak had not started yet. It started about 2 months after I joined. And I only started reporting for Aaj Tak after Newstrack stopped. Newstrack was a weekly news bulletin. Aaj Tak was a daily news bulletin. So we thought that was normal because even our seniors were like that because she was like that.
Yeah.
And the of research and how much she had read and knew. So that was what we thought was normal. Now I see that is considered some sort of an, outlier, that how a journalist so brave, how are you able to say this? But what I saw, everyone, that's what she did. So that's what we did, it's that simple.
Yeah. And then how did the idea of Newslaundry came about? How did you think of starting something on your own?
Well, actually, we had started something on our own in 99 itself. That documentary film that you mentioned in the introduction, that was, we shot that in 99. So in 99, my co-founder and me had quit TV Today because Newstrack had kind of died and Aaj Tak had started as a daily bulletin. And there were rumors and rumblings that a channel is going to start. The whole channel boom was supposed to happen. So we were not very excited by the daily news kind of format. So we quit and we said we'll make like long format documentaries or shows. But that time there weren't enough television channels for there to be requirement for shows. So for the first 2-3 years, it was a struggle. One often wondered that did we make the right decision by quitting, because the channels are booming, 24-hour news had started. But at that time we made a few documentaries. This one won a couple of awards.
Yeah.
We made one small time ad. But by the mid 2000s, we had started doing well. We had shows on pretty much every channel. Discovery, Nat Geo, Fox Traveler, all these travel channels had come in. So we became like experts at a lifestyle program. But because at the back of my mind, Prashant and me both had a news background, and we used to meet Madhu often in Delhi, somewhere or the other. And we said that, news seems to be questioning everybody, but no one's holding the news accountable. And because, Madhu would be the ideal person to do a show critiquing media,
Yeah.
That's how the idea came about. It actually came about as a show. We'll do a show. But then when we started talking, a show became 2 shows, became 3 shows, became a full website. And the internet by then, penetration wasn't like it is now. It was like broadband was, I think the penetration in India was 5% or 6%.
Okay.
Now I think it's almost 35-40% broadband.
Yeah.
So we said, let's just start a website. So it was a passion project. We hadn't really thought it through. We said, we should just do an ad-free, revenue driven only by subscribers, because the internet allows that. What's the point of the internet if you're not going to optimize that opportunity?
Yeah.
So it was through these conversations that it came out, and we started as a passion project, and then it took off.
And so now, given the recent rise of social media, as you just said, how do you think journalism has evolved and kept up with that rise? Apart from focusing just on specific target audiences, not only has the audience changed, but even the way we consume information or media has changed. How do you think journalism has kept up with that? And Newslaundry specifically.
Well, I think journalism in general has become a very loosely used term. Not all that you see on news channels is journalism. And not all that you see on YouTube is journalism. Someone just doing an explainer is not necessarily journalism. A journalist doing that is journalism. The bedrock of journalism is ground reports. And ground reports have become rare. Now, either explainers or just, a talk show with like 5 panelists, that's become the format. Now, I think that is, when you use the term journalism very loosely, would you say that's journalism? Otherwise, I think the foundation of journalism has to be ground reports. So I think that kind of suffered significantly between, I'd say, 2010, 11 to now. Ground reports became less, and now I think they're making a comeback, and that's thanks to digital news. I think social media has made it possible for people with very little capital and access to, capital like us to kind of start a digital platform. And there's so many that have come up, and they're doing a better job than many of the legacy ones that have a lot of money. So that way, it's a good thing. It has allowed a lot more people to get into the journalism space, because earlier you needed a broadcast license, there was only satellite, etc., etc. So in that sense, a lot more people can actually attempt to do journalism. So that's good.
Yeah.
On the downside, outcome of the digital age is an extremely polarized politics, because political parties and leaders around the world have realized how to use social media to spread misinformation, disinformation, and also to polarize and get the most tribal instincts out of us. And that leads to certain echo chambers. So that's a downside. But net, I think keeping the downside and upside both in perspective, I think it's a step forward. You see a lot more good journalism now than you did, say, 5 years ago.
Okay. That's surprising for me, because my take on it would have been that now that journalism has sort of decentralized and distilled into something that everyone has access to, as you rightly said, the authority on it also loses, so there is more capability of false information and everything. And I thought that might have led to worse off journalism compared to what was there earlier.
No, there is a lot more of it happening. So there is a lot more, garbage to wade through before you get the good stuff. But there's a lot more good stuff as well. I mean, there's a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death. I mean, I would recommend your audience reads that. That, was written in the 70s by Neil Postman, and he kind of prophesized, or his outlook of broadcast television was that it'll turn America into a really dumb country, etc., etc. The usual tropes and the usual cliches. And his thing was, and his frame of reference was, the early 1900s or the late 1800s, where people used to sit in taverns and bars and discuss politics. Now, that may be all very good, and the presidents of India, of USA came out of that culture. But how many people were there at that bar? 100, 200, 400?
Yeah.
Whereas television broadcast became, I think, sure, there was a lot more shit shows like, the Big Boss and all that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot more audience for the good stuff. So, I mean, and it's not like when one government had monopoly over what was true was necessarily a great time. I mean, in the times of Doordarshan, you're too young to remember that. But
No.
until I actually became a full-grown adult, I didn't know what happened in Delhi in '84. Uh, because when we were taught, because there were not even private channels, we just saw Indira Gandhi had been assassinated. The whole country was very sad. Everyone should be mourning. No one even knew that there was a riot in Delhi. That came up like much later. So because the only news channel was the government, there was no other news channel.
Yeah.
Channels also came in the 90s.
Yeah.
Sorry, in the 2000s.
Yeah.
So I think the monopoly of information is a bad thing. No matter how peaceful it seems, there is too much being hidden. The cacophony of noise of social media can be extremely distressing and stress-inducing sometimes. But net, I think it's very difficult to keep the truth down today, even while it is very easy to spread lies as well.
That's very inspirational indeed. And so specifically at Newslaundry, how challenging is the role of a CEO, and has it helped you become a better journalist?
Well, I don't know if I don't consider myself a journalist anymore. Ever since I took on a management role, because like I said, the bedrock of journalism is ground reports, and I don't do any ground reports. I just do interviews and commentary.
Yeah.
So I call myself a news professional. I don't call myself a journalist. But I think running Newslaundry has definitely made me a better lawyer. Although I haven't studied law. The amount of cases that we are in court with, some filed against us, some we filed against the income tax department because of the raids and the harassment that happens. It has made me understand business really well. And I think it's important more journalists understand business so that more journalists can become businessmen rather than businessmen
Becoming journalist.
taking over journalists, because that is actually what has led to the death of journalism in legacy media. So, but yes, I think with experience, I can identify good journalists much better than I could earlier. I think it's given me that little separation from myself doing it and being able to see stuff and seeing what is really fantastic journalism, what is not, from the point of view of public interest, from the point of view of not just public interest in the sense that it is in the interest of the public, but also that it interests the public. That's a fine line you got to kind of walk, because if you just go with what gets eyeballs, then you only go up with like some actors bikini pics in Goa, which many news portals are full of that. See such and such stars holiday from Ibiza, from Goa, from Maldives, because that's just to get clicks. So yeah, I think it's given me a macro picture, which I think is I find valuable at this day and time.
And so you mentioned that, you in your role, you also interview a lot of people. So just a question that I personally want to know, what was your most challenging and what was your most enjoyable interview?
That's very hard to say because I mean there's so many, you can't really pick one. I mean, I've done a bunch of interviews, but the interviews that really come to mind for me are not the ones from Newslaundry. They're when I was at Newstrack, because I was so young.
Yeah.
I joined when I was 20. So, I remember interviewing Jagmohan, who was the BJP candidate in the Lok Sabha election of, I think, what was 95, 97. I don't even remember what year it was. I remember interviewing Sushma Swaraj back then, and she scolded me. So I found those more fun. Like at Newslaundry, once a much more confident person. It's interesting, it's fun, but I think the real excitement used to be when I was in my early 20s doing Newstrack interviews, because there was this excitement and discovery which is still there in a sense today, but
As you said,
don't
it's
get
become a macro now, hasn't it?
yeah, and also you don't get that nervousness that you got back then. So that kind of, you miss that. It was nice to have that, butterflies in your stomach when you're going to interview someone and stuff. There was you were like on edge. It was fun. I still enjoy it, but that thing is not there anymore.
Yeah. And what about filmmaking, directing and producing? So how did you get into it? And was it always a passion that, you wanted to explore? or did it just like
But
right?
travel definitely was. In fact, when we quit Newstrack, Prashant and I, we had quit with the idea that we will do travel documentary films. There was just no market for it. So we did this one Chadar, which
Yeah,
is basically a travel, it's a trade route from
Lanskar.
from Chilling, that's near Leh, to Padum. And back then, no Indian crew had done the whole thing. To the best of my knowledge, we're the first Indian crew to do the full
And
trek
it
ride
won,
up to
it
Padum.
won a few awards as well, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yes, it won us a couple of awards. In fact,
Yeah.
that's how we
You
kept
mentioned a
going
few
for a
in
while.
the description.
Yeah. So once we did that, then all these channels weren't there, these travel shows, etc. So for a while, we were just doing marketing films, corporate films, etc. Between, let's say, 2000, 2001 till 2003, 4. We did a few documentary films as well, which I really enjoyed doing. But then the whole travel show boom came when Discovery and Fox Traveler and all these channels came into India. So
Yeah.
that's because we had already, done a couple of shows, a couple of document films on travel, which had done really well. We got the opportunity to do a bunch of shows for these channels, and a couple of those shows were very successful. They were big hits. So then we just, we've done a bunch. Small Screen must have produced some 10, 12 travel and food shows, at one time. So yeah, a whole bunch.
And one specific show that I'm interested in, and again, going back to my school, is because they came to our school. It's called Highway on My Plate, the NTTV show, so which you directed. And how much of a role do you think that played in boosting your career, specifically?
I
Because
think
it was one of the biggest shows, if I'm not wrong, right? Of that
yeah,
genre.
it was one of our most successful shows, although we had a bunch of others also that were pretty successful. But yeah, this one was, I guess, the most cult. Rocky Maimur was like,
Yeah,
became the face of food and travel.
yeah.
I had come to Sonar for that. I directed
Oh,
that episode as well. So I remember coming
you must
there.
have watched that video so many times, that clip.
In fact, I was just watching the flooding in Himachal,
Yeah,
and
it's
that where that dhaba was before you go
Shade
up to
Himachal.
Sonar. It's become a river, man. It was like
Yeah,
scary when
it's
I
like
was seeing what's happening there
it's
right
like
now. But anyway,
like yeah, the entire road got washed away.
yeah, I saw that. I saw the video of that. So, I think Highway I played definitely cemented us as the guys to make food and travel shows. Because
Yeah.
after that, we did a show food. Sorry, called Roti Rasta India for food. We did Twist of Taste with Denise Bhatia for uh, um, Fox Traveler. We did a bunch of other, fine dining shows for another corporate client. So yeah, basically the entire television boom, we had just so many shows and we had a bunch of ad films that we did. So
Yeah.
between 2004-5 to 2010-11, the production house, grew from 2 people to 50 people. So of course it had a big role to play in how we were fairly successful in what we did. And it allowed us to start Newslaundry without really worrying about, is it a revenue model. It started as a passion project because we thought it was the right thing to do. We thought that news should run ad free. So it was just a punt. I mean, it wasn't really a thought through decision like that. So yeah, I think all the video production and the travel shows we did had a huge role to play in our success. But I enjoyed Highway I played like I don't think I've enjoyed anything as much as that, because you just drove across the country for 7 years. Other than Tripura, there is not a state in this country that I haven't driven through and around and within.
Wow.
So I think other than Rocky and Mayur, I don't know anyone who has, traveled the country
Wow.
to every state the way, we did. Uh, it was, if anyone can, and because we did it so fast, like I remember the first schedule, we start from Delhi and we were in Mangalore, Udupi and then Mangalore in 13 or 14 days. So we were shooting an episode a day. So
Wow.
and then later we started our schedules. We, like 5-6 days we'd shoot, then we'd take a break, then 5-6. So the Northeast, when we went to Assam, Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, that schedule was some 25-26 days. We started from Guwahati, from Kolkata, Santiniketan, then Guwahati, Shillong. So in my head, sometimes I get a little confused. Where was that? Where was this? But when I see pictures or
Yeah.
when I focus, I realize, okay, I've been here, I've been here. And it was just so enjoyable because doing that with, three of your closest friends,
Yeah.
it was, it was an adventure like no other. And also that can't be done again because when we did it, there were no expressways. Like now, Ahmedabad to Baroda, you don't have to stop anywhere. It's just
Yeah.
zip, then dhabas.
Yeah.
Back then you have to stop at Anand. If you want to go from here to Dehradun, you don't have to stop anywhere. I mean, you can get there in 4.5 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah.
These expressways don't even have any dhabas. And even
Yeah.
if they do, now they're the same. There's Starbucks, there's KFC.
Yeah.
But back then, every highway had its own dhaba, which had its own specialty. So I think when I'm old and looking back and going through the photographs on my laptop, I think Highway Plate is going to be something that I'm like, how did you even pull it off? It was amazing, yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay, so now our next segment is a rapid fire segment. For our audience members, we will ask Mr. Sekhri short questions about a wide range of topics, and as the name suggests, it's supposed to be rapid fire. And then we will be concluding this interview. So what is your success mantra?
Hard work and perseverance.
One piece of advice you would give this generation of students?
Listen more than give your opinion.
Very interesting. What is your favorite genre of music, and who's your favorite musician?
And my favorite is probably Qawwali and Punjabi folk.
Even I enjoy quite a bit of Qawwali myself. Who's your favorite sports person or athlete?
Michael Jordan. Always, every time. And Muhammad Ali comes a close second.
And who inspires you?
Jordan and Ali. And of course, my biggest hero is Bapu Gandhi. But he's at a different level. Everyone comes much. But yeah, I think Gandhi's single-mindedness and he was unafraid. I find that phenomenal.
What makes a day successful for you? Like, what do you count as a good day done when you go to bed?
If I've been productive, if I've actually got something done, like I maintain lists, and that's another thing I would recommend to everybody. You should, maintain lists.
Yeah.
So if I've crossed out half the things on that, I'm satisfied.
What is your favorite holiday destination? And having traveled so much.
I really don't care where I am as long as I'm with the people I like and I love family and friends. I don't have a holiday destination. It's just the people I'm with. I could be happy anywhere.
Over vacation. And you said that you've eaten at so many different places. What's your favorite cuisine?
That's a very tough one, yeah. I can't say I have a favorite cuisine. I love, gulab kebabs. I love a certain kind of biryani, which you get in Diggle. I love certain kinds of dosas. I love steak. I mean, I don't have a favorite cuisine, man. But in all honesty, food is not that important in my life. It's not one of the.
Oh, that's
exciting.
That's surprising, given that you.
Yeah, I used to make food shows. Everyone used to say they're wasted on me because I don't enjoy it that much. I mean, I'm fine, but I'm not like crazy about food or anything.
And who is somebody who you wish to interview in the future?
Narendra Modi.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to join us for this episode of Vichaar. This was certainly very insightful, and it has truly been an honor and a pleasure for me to host you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for calling me. My pleasure.